your fork has been lying to you. Some foods fool your eyes before they reach your tongue. Others change flavor just because they get louder. One spicy bite is not even a taste. A frozen pea can embarrass a tired fresh one. That tiny date on the package may not mean what you think. Even your plate is messing with you. Your nose does more tasting than your mouth gets credit for. Your eating speed changes the ending. And your genes can literally edit dinner. By the end of this, your kitchen will feel way less ordinary. So let's start where a lot of food myths love to hide. Number 10 is sitting in the egg aisle, looking weirdly judgmental for something that came from a chicken. Brown eggs often look more natural, more expensive, and somehow more virtuous, so people assume they must be healthier. USDA says the shell color comes from the breed of the hen, not from a secret nutritional upgrade. It also says nutrient levels are not significantly different in white and brown shell eggs. So your scramble, omelet, or fried egg sandwich is not secretly leveling up, because the shell happened to be brown. So if you pay extra for brown eggs, you may be buying vibe, not bonus nutrition. That does not make brown eggs bad. It just means your breakfast has a better marketing team than you thought. And somehow, the freezer has been pulling the same kind of trick right under your nose. Number 9 belongs to frozen vegetables, which deserve a serious public relations comeback. People love treating fresh produce like royalty and frozen produce like the emergency substitute nobody really wanted. But USDA guidance says frozen vegetables can be just as nutritious as fresh ones. USDA even notes that frozen corn is just as nutritious as its fresh counterpart. That makes frozen produce useful for real life, where good intentions are great, but grocery timing is usually chaos. That matters because frozen produce can be stored for longer instead of slowly losing appeal in your crisper drawer. So the bag of peas in your freezer is not a failure. It might be your most practical healthy decision. Now let's defend the appliance that gets blamed for crimes it did not commit. Number 8 is the microwave, which has spent years being treated like a nutritional supervillain. Harvard Health says some nutrients break down with heat no matter how you cook your food. But it also says microwaving often preserves vitamin C and other heat-sensitive nutrients because cooking times are shorter. Fast cooking with less liquid can be a quiet advantage, especially for vegetables that lose nutrients into water. Using very little water helps too, because nutrients can leach out into a pot of boiling water. So the microwave is not automatically ruining dinner. Sometimes it is preserving more than the stovetop does. And the next fact hides in plain sight on labels you probably read in 2 seconds. Number 7 lives in the tiny printed dates on packaged food. A lot of people read best if used by like a dramatic countdown to doom. FDA says that phrase is meant to signal when a product will be at its best flavor and quality. In other words, it is usually about quality, not a universal safety deadline. FDA also says confusion over date labeling contributes to a huge chunk of food waste. That is a big reason perfectly decent food gets binned while everyone feels responsible and slightly betrayed. So before tossing something, check for spoilage like noticeable changes in color, texture, or consistency. That one pause can save food, save money, and keep perfectly good snacks out of the trash. But wait, your plate has been editing portions before the food even touches your mouth. Number 6 starts with your dishes, not your ingredients. The size and color of a plate can change how large a portion looks to you. Researchers describe this with the Del Boeuf illusion, where the same amount of food seems smaller on a larger plate. Low contrast can add to the effect, like pale food sitting on a pale plate. One study found that larger white plates delayed satiety-related perception compared with smaller or colored plates. Restaurants and home kitchens both play with presentation, which means your appetite can be nudged before the first bite. So sometimes portion judgment is not weak willpower. Sometimes your dinnerware is doing visual magic. And somehow, the next one proves your ears get a vote at the table too. Number 5 reaches your ears before it reaches your brain. Sound is part of eating, even though most of us acts like flavor lives only on the tongue. A recent review says crispness, crunchiness, hardness, and freshness are tightly linked to auditory cues. It also cites a classic potato chip study where altered sound made chips seem crisper and fresher. Your brain loves matching what it sees and hears, so a weak crunch can make food feel older instantly. That means the loud snap of an apple or chip is not just background noise. It is part of the experience your brain uses to judge texture, freshness, and satisfaction. Stale chips are suddenly less of a taste problem and more of an audio collapse. Now this is where food stops feeling simple and starts feeling like a full sensory prank. Number 4 changes the way you define taste. Medlane Plus lists 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. But flavor is bigger than that, because taste and smell work together almost constantly. An NCBI chapter explains that flavor also includes smell, texture, temperature, and even burning or stinging sensations. Much of what you think is taste actually comes from smell moving upward while you chew. Pinch your nose and suddenly a jelly bean loses most of its personality, which is a very humbling experiment. That is why food gets strangely flat when your nose is blocked during a cold. So when you say a soup tastes amazing, your nose is quietly doing a lot of the work. And this is exactly why the next fact feels like your mouth is being dramatically betrayed. Number 3 is the spicy lie. Chili heat feels like a taste, but it is really a pain and heat signal. A PubMed Central review says capsaicin activates TRPV1 receptors and stimulates the trigeminal nerve. That produces hot, burning, and stinging sensations instead of fitting into the 5 basic tastes. That is also why spicy food can feel thrilling and painful at the exact same time. So your mouth treats a hot pepper less like candy and more like a tiny fire alarm. Once you know that, spicy noodles feel less like flavor alone and more like edible special effects. But the next one is even stranger because your DNA may be quietly arguing with taco night. Number 2 proves that dinner can get personal fast. If cilantro tastes bright and fresh to you, great. If it tastes like soap, that can be real biology. A large genetic study linked cilantro's soapy taste to a variant called ORS 72921-01. That variant sits near a cluster of olfactory receptor genes, with OR6A2 identified as a strong candidate. Those receptors respond to aldehydes, which help create cilantro's distinctive smell. Food arguments get more complicated when one person's fresh herb is another person's accidental dish soap. So when someone says cilantro ruins everything, they may be reporting genetics, not being dramatic. That one makes food preferences feel less like personality and more like built-in software. And now for the fact that might change tonight's dinner more than any other on this list. Number 1 is about speed. How fast you eat can change how full you feel after the meal. In a controlled study, people reported more fullness and less hunger when the same meal was stretched to 30 minutes. The study did not find major differences in several gut hormone responses, but people still felt the change. Stretching the same food across more minutes can change the whole story your body tells you afterward. So slowing down is not fake wellness theater. Your experience of the meal can genuinely shift. You do not need a meditation gong either. Just a little more time between bites. And that might be the wildest twist here, because the easiest upgrade on this list costs nothing. So after all that, food looks less like simple fuel and more like a full brain magic trick. Your eyes, ears, nose, nerves, plate, pace, freezer, and even your genes all get a vote. None of this means food is fake. It means eating is way more multisensory than it looks. That means changing how you eat is not always about discipline. Sometimes it starts with noticing the hidden levers. Maybe you stop fearing the microwave. Maybe you rescue the frozen peas. Maybe you finally stop letting eggshells trick you. Maybe you give cilantro haters a little more grace at taco night. Once you see all this, a normal grocery trip starts feeling like a science museum with snacks. And if this rewired the way you see dinner, there is a whole lot more weird true stuff waiting for you. Tell me which fact changed your habits the most, then jump into the next Zorp Facts video when you're ready.